Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm going to be talking about non-fiction books about archaeology. So a little while ago on this channel I did a bit of a shout out in the community post being like, hey, what's some weirdly specific books that you would like a recommendation video for? And somebody in that requested archaeology books, so I'm finally getting around to that one. So we're going to have some general books here and then some more specific ones into archaeology, but it's looking a little bit more current than kind of the paleontology stuff I tend to read. The first one I want to recommend is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. This isn't technically just an archaeology book, it's actually a brief history of humankind in total, going all the way up to modern day. But the first half of the book is really focused on the archaeological record, and it looks at things like the agricultural revolution and really tracks sort of Homo sapiens all the way through to the modern day. And for me, this was one of my first exposures and experiences reading about prehistory and archaeology in general. I do like Yuval Noah Harari's writing style. I listened to this on audiobook. It's quite a chunky boy, but it gives you these broad sweeping macro looks at sort of the big movements that have happened and some of the evidence we have for it. So I think it's a really solid place to start if you don't have a strong background in history, just because it's going to place things in a timeline for you and make some of the other books a little bit easier to approach. I will say that he has another follow-on book, Homo Deus, which I freaking hated, so I wouldn't recommend that one, but this one's definitely a slam dunk read. I gave it 5 stars. The next 2 books are by the same author because I'm completely obsessed with Alice Roberts. She's one of my favourite non-fiction writers. The first book of hers is definitely the one I preferred more, and that is Tamed, 10 Species That Changed Our World. This is a look at 10 plant and animal species that we either domesticated and cultivated, and the ways that that has impacted human evolution over the years and human kind of development. It's such a cool, really interesting look at the archaeological record and the ways that we've interacted with the world and kind of shaped it. It covers things like dogs and cats and chickens, but you've also got like grains and rice as well, and it sort of spans all across the globe, and it's just really, really fascinating. This is like one of my favourite books. I just thought it was such a perfect read, and because each chapter is a different species, it's really broken into these nice chunks that is like structured and organised and kind of lends itself to quite a fast non-fiction read, even though it's quite dense in information. One that I did enjoy but not quite as much is Ancestors. This is the prehistory of Britain in 7 burials, so it is focused exclusively on Britain, which is why I think I preferred Tamed more, just because it bounced around the world a little bit more. And this is looking at 7 burial sites, and it's kind of looking like pre the Romans, because there's definitely an idea in the UK that like our history really started with the Romans, whereas there was a lot that was happening beforehand, and so this is a book to kind of shine a light on that. It still has the same lovely writing style that Alice Roberts brought to Tamed, but for me personally, I'm more interested in the content in Tamed, and this one got a little bit samey with the different burial sites. I'm just less interested in only humans. I really like it when we look at how we interacted with plants, and I think that like tapped into the science side of things for me in Tamed, whereas this one is a lot more just strict prehistory. But it is still really cool. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. It's a really solid read, and focusing in on really specific burial sites again helps to really structure the book and give you focus, which then becomes jumping off points to discuss the cultures that are described in each burial. So fantastic place to kind of check out British history in particular. The next book I want to recommend is Built on Bones, 15,000 Years of Urban Life and Death by Brenna Hassett. This is a look at urbanisation and the way that the fossil record either like confirms or like provides evidence against the idea that life was better when we were rural. So there's definitely sort of a sense of like the move into cities has kind of ruined us, and the progressive urbanization of our world is the reason why we have so many more health problems today. You know, it's kind of like crazy idea that cancer only appeared when the Industrial Revolution occurred, which is nonsense and definitely is refuted by the fossil record. We've got evidence of dinosaurs with bone cancer. It's freaking cool. Anyway, not what I'm talking about. Focus on the book, Emma. So this is a book that is looking at like the move to urbanization, going all the way back 15,000 years, and that transition from hunter-gatherer into agricultural, and how that has like impacted sort of our skeletons and the implications for our health that we can learn from that. Now, full confession, I don't actually remember a crazy amount about this book. It's one that I am really struggling to like bring out any particular anecdotes for it, and I only gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, so I don't think I had the best time with it. I did still want to mention it in this video because it's a cool topic for archaeology, and a 3-star is still a fairly good read from me. So it's one that like possibly you'll enjoy if you're interested in this area. So I thought it was worth mentioning because I don't see anybody talking about this. But it hasn't really left much of a lasting impression, and 3 stars is not a glowing review, shall we say. So check it out and then tell me in the comments what you thought about it, so that maybe we could jog my memory. I've like flicked through the synopsis and everything, and honestly I got nothing for you guys, so clearly that one didn't stick. Now if you want to focus a bit more sort of niche and more kind of streamlined and really like focus in on a particular topic, I've got a few different ones for you. If Neanderthals are where you're interested in, then you definitely have to check out Kindred, Neanderthal Life, Love and Death and Art by Wragg Sykes. This is a look at, rather than Homo sapiens, it is our incredibly close cousin, the Neanderthal, an earlier version of humans which definitely we interacted with as Homo sapiens, and it is a look at what we know about Neanderthals. The idea of them being this sort of hunchback, very idiotic humanoid creature that we see in pop culture is completely wrong, and is actually based on the fact that the first skeleton we found suffered from severe osteoarthritis, hence their hunch position. Crazy that then becomes like the archetype that we now understand them to be. And this is a look at like how their cultures worked, what we have in evidence in terms of the way that they lived, the way that they fought, and sort of the interactions with Homo sapiens, and this kind of dueling idea of, did Homo sapiens wipe out Neanderthals, or did we actually like form a subspecies together, and are there definitely like people who managed to interbreed between the two species, which the DNA records definitely do lend a lot of support to, and you can genuinely get tested and find out how much Neanderthal DNA you have, which is kind of cool. The bits that really stand out was a really interesting chapter about flints, I remember in particular, and the different ways that flint making techniques can track movement of Neanderthals across various continents. So that was incredibly cool and interesting, and it's definitely a fun look at an area where like a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about history, so a good one if you want to like start to get a little bit more granular. Then if you want to bring it slightly more towards modern day, but don't worry, we're still very much solidly in the realm of archaeology, I have When Women Ruled the World by Cooney. This is a look at 6 queens of Egypt, where you have Cleopatra as a lot more of a modern one, and then 5 that were far before her, because the ancient Egyptian rule was like freaking forever, guys. It really lasted a very long time, more so than we actually realise, I think, again in pop culture. So this is a look at the queens and sort of the way that they ruled, and is an insight into ancient Egyptian culture, specifically focused on their monarchy. As somebody who really doesn't know much about ancient Egypt, I thought this was a really interesting place to start. I definitely loved the look on the women. One thing I will say is Cooney's writing style is a little bit difficult at times. She was determined to connect every woman's plight within ancient Egypt back to Hillary Clinton's sort of like presidential run against Trump. Very weird as a like writing decision, so if you can move past those, you do get some interesting information in there. And she definitely makes some throwaway statements that have an air of controversy around them that are not necessarily accepted dogma within that field and kind of accepted doctrine. So it's just something to bear in mind when you are reading non-fiction, is often these things are not as clear cut as authors make them out to be, and an author will have picked a particular side of some debates and framed them as less controversial than they necessarily are, so you might get conflicting information across the books that you read. But that's interesting, like that's the point to academia. And then again, really focusing in, the next one I wanted to recommend is Viking Britain by Thomas Williams. This is a look at Viking Britain, like what it says on the tin. So the Vikings came to the UK, and it is about the history of them coming in, how that impacted the sort of existing culture who were here, and it is a look at both their like lifestyle, some military stuff, and then all about their like gods and sort of the way that they lived. Again, Vikings are one where we have this like vision of them with like Viking horns and being like bearded and very dirty and scruffy, and this is a book that is trying to refute a lot of those mythologies, because Viking horns turns out like a thing from an opera. I think it was Wagner, so not a thing at all in the archaeological record. It's quite a dense book, and I definitely found the military stuff less interesting than the cultural side of things, but that's kind of the point with non-fiction, is you quite often do get a mishmash of areas that you're interested in or not. So I think it's relatively well balanced, so if you're someone who likes more of the military stuff, you'll also still enjoy it, and it wasn't so heavily overburdened with one or the other that it felt unbalanced, if that makes sense. So yeah, really interesting look at a culture I didn't know much about, and it's a nice history of, again, my country, the UK. And I do have River Kings on my shelf, which is another look at Vikings, but specifically Viking trade, which I'm really excited to get to. So there you have it. Those are some books about archaeology, more focused on sort of prehistoric stuff than necessarily more modern things. I think it definitely still counts as archaeology rather than paleontology. The line between the two gets very blurry for me. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video, Kathy, who requested this, and for those of you who aren't Kathy, I hope you enjoyed it as well. It's not just for her. Do let me know in the comments down below, have you read any of these? What do you think? And do you have any other recommendations for archaeology books that I could check out next? And if you want some really great ancient history books, then you definitely need to check out Justin's channel, Triumphal Reads, because he is the king of ancient history on BookTube. So little shout out to Justin, just because this is like my tiny little haul. He's got so many books in this area. So if you're interested in this, you have to check out his channel. That's it from me. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.